Hey, hello.
Alaikum, Atif. How's it going?
I'm Islam. Good, good, good. How are you
It's nice.
doing?
Alhamdulillah, it's nice meeting you officially.
Yeah, it's good to meet you too. I can't change my name.
You can. If
I'm
you click
trying
the
to.
the three dots next to your name, at the
Yeah,
it should say rename.
it doesn't.
It doesn't. Okay.
Oh. Assalamu alaikum, Abdellatif. How are you? You're muted, bro.
How are you?
Good, good. Alhamdulillah.
I'm
Doing
missing
well.
you.
I know, man. I miss you a lot too. How is
Yeah.
life?
Life is good. Norway is super chill.
Dude, how's Norway?
Norway is amazing. I love it. Alhamdulillah. You should come and visit.
You like it better
Is
than
this-
San Francisco? I mean, honestly, anything's better than San Francisco, but like,
I like the people who I interact with in a limited way, and I like my work. I do miss like having close friends in the community in the Bay Area. I miss it a lot.
Yeah, I miss you too, bro.
you can't start like a Minterns Norway, like Oslo.
Dude, I only hang out with like tech people. Like I can't communicate with non-tech people.
This is being recorded. Be careful, bro. This is being recorded. These Zooms.
I'll edit that out.
No, it's fine.
Open discrimination.
He can't communicate outside of code.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. I also feel like in the Bay Area, you take for granted like how ambitious like everyone is. Like when you're outside, you feel like, what are you even like doing? And just like people are hanging out and you feel like it's a waste of time. Bay Area, you hang out and you feel like you're doing some sort of accomplishment or like some sort of progress somehow.
Just going to Phil's coffee.
That's what I've been telling people, but then they all complain about it's too transactional, which is its own thing. So
that's true. Yeah.
So how's the event been so far, Shams?
Alhamdulillah. It's been very, very unique. Especially like in an international sense. We didn't expect for there to be so many international attendees. So we didn't think time zones would ever be an issue until like very recently. And we're like, okay, we have to start accommodating for this now. So like what time is it where you're at, Abdellatif?
It is 9 p.m.
It is 9 p.m. Okay. So for me, it's noon. And for other people who are joining, it's like 3 p.m. And then we have people from Egypt and India who are also a part of this. So for them, it's like completely, I don't even think it's like a decent time.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, if you're doing like an international event, early PST works best, like ideally before like noon. But like if you're just doing like Europe, before like 2, 3 p.m. is fine.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Nadah. Assalamu
alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, and you?
Not too bad, alhamdulillah. How's everyone doing?
Good. Assalamu alaikum, guys. Sorry, I was muted.
I believe we're waiting for Zuhayeer, and then we can begin, inshallah.
Yeah, this lighting is absolute trash. I'm thinking I'm gonna take this outside.
No, it works. It works.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
I'm like under a spotlight. It's like there's shadows everywhere. All right, that's fine. I'll make it work. It's okay.
We can see you just fine.
Hey, make me a co-host too, so I can rename myself. Oh, I can rename myself now. Nice. All right, there we go. Tarjimly team is now Atif Javed finally. That's when you know we're using one Zoom account for everyone. One Zoom Pro account for everyone.
Yeah, it's better than us. We don't even have a Zoom account. We're using MCAs. So.
Oh, that's even better.
Like the youth committee.
Yeah, they're youth committee.
Nice.
Oh, I need to change my name too. That's a good point.
I actually don't. Is it Shams?
That is my name, yes.
Okay, so you're Shams. Okay.
I am Shams, yeah.
Who's the guy who's been messaging me? It's great.
Could somebody get in contact with Zuhair?
Yeah, let me text him. He's probably asleep. Join the Zoom. He's running late. He said he'll join in maybe 5 to 10 minutes if that's okay.
Okay, no worries. Okay, no worries. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Shams Amin. I am one of the organizers of UmmaHacks, the world's first virtual Muslim hackathon. This panel is co-hosted by Minterns. Muhammad Ibrahim, did you want to give a quick spiel about Minterns? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yeah, so basically, Minterns is just an organization of Muslim interns, and it's largely in the Bay Area, but because everything is happening remote now, people are just spread out throughout the world. And we basically organize different events and workshops, like panels like these, where we get either Muslim entrepreneurs or different, or Muslims who are doing different things in the industry. And then we get to interview them and let them share their experiences with the rest. And I think I can let Abdellatif talk more about the organization.
Yeah, so like Muhammad mentioned, it's a community for Muslim interns and new grads. Part of it is having the knowledge sharing sessions with people who are seasoned in the industry. But also at the end of every summer, there's a referral program if you want to get into certain tech companies. And more importantly, like you make friends that spend like a lifetime with you afterwards. So if you want to join, head to minterns.org and you'll find more information on the organization.
For sure, Jazakallah khairan. So starting with this panel, I'm just going to go around with all of our panelists. So Nadah, can you begin? Can you tell us about what you do?
Sure. Is this the part where I have 5 minutes to kind of explain my work, or do you want me to get into that later?
As long as you feel appropriate.
Okay, cool.
But yeah,
so my spiel then. Okay. My name is Nadah. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I've been able to build for faith communities, in particular the Muslim community, through my work as a software engineer at Facebook. And so just to give some background about myself, I've been involved in the community in some capacity since I was younger. My parents were, either on the board of the masjid or we were involved with Sunday schools. And my faith is also really important to me as a practicing Muslim and also visibly Muslim through my hijab. Community engagement was always really important. And, being in tech and studying computer science, those worlds are kind of mutually exclusive, or at least they seem like that. So I was involved with MSA on campus, and then I was also involved in a lot of tech clubs. So it was like those two worlds typically didn't overlap. And it wasn't until recently when I realized that, I can actually use my skills and my work to really benefit my community. And that kind of started a couple months ago. I had started at Facebook in January, and I graduated from UC San Diego last year with my master's in computer science, and I finished undergrad there as well. And so I started at Facebook in January. March was kind of when the world was on fire. Everyone was kind of transitioning to working from home. We didn't really know what the current situation was like. And so we were working from home at that point, and Facebook as like a social media platform, we were seeing that there was a lot of usage of Facebook. In particular, we saw spikes in things like gaming and entertainment. And what was surprising was we saw a lot of spikes in also spiritual presence on Facebook. And this was through churches that were having their services online now. And as we saw, some masajids were doing khutbahs online. And it was like around that time too, when we kind of admitted to ourselves that like this Ramadan was not going to be the same either. Things were kind of getting better. We thought maybe we'll be able to go to the masjid. But then we kind of came to terms with the fact that like Ramadan was going to have to be virtual this year too. And we were obviously all kind of bummed, like what is Tarawih going to be like? You know, what are our iftars going to be like? And as someone who's been involved in the community, I was also thinking about it from the perspective of the masajids. And so it was like, how are we going to be doing fundraising this year? You know, and are we like fully equipped to be transitioning our programming to being all virtual? And so like I had this internal dilemma where I was like, okay, what are we going to do? And being really action oriented and thinking about my position at Facebook, it was like, how can I use that position of privilege to really benefit my community? And so that kind of like kicked off a couple of different work streams. You know, being involved in the community, I kind of reached out to my masjid and to a couple of other leaders that I knew and just kind of talked through my concerns to see if it was the same concerns that they had. And fundraising was obviously at the top of the list. You know, some messages don't really have online donation platforms. So it was like, how are they going to reach their community? How are they going to raise money? And so it was a really scary time for everyone. So kind of reaching out to them and also reaching out to the people I knew at Facebook. So we have some people working in partnerships, and Facebook has a lot of strong partnerships with the Christian community. They have more of like a virtual presence. You know, there's churches that have really large Facebook pages and groups, and that's something that we just don't have, you know, as a Muslim community. So at the time they were supporting these faith communities by sending out these live kits, which just have like, you know, equipment to set up a live stream, you know, like a tripod and some other things. And at that point they sent out those live kits to maybe like 100 churches, but not a single masjid. And this was like a week before Ramadan, where I was like, this is actually when we need things like this. And so it was helping support them and getting connections with the Muslim community that they already didn't have. And, you know, through my position, you know, being involved, I could kind of make that connection. So I guess by the end of Ramadan, we reached enough people where we sent out around 50 live kits, which was really great. And kind of just started that conversation between, you know, Facebook and, you know, different masajids and Muslim organizations. And besides that, second work stream was more of outreach. So it was like, how can they use Facebook to really fill the needs that they have, you know, during Ramadan? How can we use it to live stream different events? How can we use it to fundraise? And Facebook has a charitable giving team. If any of you have created Facebook fundraisers before. And a lot of people don't know about Facebook fundraisers. And if they're having, you know, all of their programming online, either streamed through Facebook or Zoom or YouTube, why not also collect donations through that? You know, on live videos, you can set up fundraisers that are linked so you can, you know, donate right away instead of having to go to an external site. And so it was kind of that education aspect where I hosted a workshop with the Islamic Student Council of Southern California. We got some community leaders together, so we had around 70 or 80. I was able to pull the PM on the charitable giving team and also someone on live that kind of came and spoke to them, and we kind of just talked about, you know, how you can use Facebook. And so that was like a continuation of that conversation between Facebook and the Muslim community. And then it was me just supporting, you know, people one-off, where like I helped my masjid set up a fundraiser. And alhamdulillah, like the goal was raising 50K by the end of Ramadan, and we got really close. It was around like 40, 45. And all of that was just through setting up a Facebook fundraiser. And a lot of masajids that just didn't even know how to do that were missing out on those things. And so I was just reaching out to people manually, and it was like, this is not scalable in any way. And so that's where I encourage, you know, a lot of us that are more tech savvy, like think about what the needs are of your community. Even if it's just your immediate community, that has a lot of impact. And besides that, the third work stream was more product and feature work. So I'm not sure if any of you actually followed any masajids or organizations like through Facebook Live this year, but we launched a feature called Ramadan Quick Comments. So if you notice at the bottom of any videos, we had a couple of words that came up. So we had Alhamdulillah and Subhanallah, and little emojis. So we had like the dua hands, and we had the crescent moon. And a lot of this was just to kind of recognize Muslims on the platform. And I think it's just really meaningful for them to do just like a small action like this, you know, and just seeing like the number of impressions that we got per day, you know, like 200K, you know, people just, you know, clicking Alhamdulillah, which is really amazing. And so just like my presence there and being able to support that process, because like I basically kind of curated this list. I was like, these are the words that are really important to us. And a lot of times they just took my word for it. And I think we kind of came to, you know, we decided on the final list of words, we decided on the emojis, and then they took it to like the localization team that works on a lot of language things. And they came back and they were like, okay, so this is what we're going to put. So instead of Alhamdulillah, we're going to write praise God. Instead of Assalamu alaikum, we're going to write may peace be upon you. And then I remember that morning talking to the content strategist for 2 hours, just trying to explain that like the translations are not the same as like the transliterations. and that you're not going to be able to reach the community, and it's not going to be as meaningful if you just write like peace be upon you, you know, and just explaining that like we need to write it the way that, you know, we say it. And so there's a lot of that knowledge that like we need to give to you know, people where there aren't any Muslims in the space. And so that was kind of the most exciting part, because, you know, a lot of my friends were seeing this, and, you know, my masjid was seeing this, and just seeing everyone kind of click alhamdulillah and stuff. So that was fun. And that's where I'll stop for now. There's a lot of different things that we're working on now at the company to support faith communities more, because we realize that this is like a big audience that we can reach. But there's not a lot I can talk about now, but it's a lot of exciting things. And I'm really excited to be able to do this, you know, to be able to do my job as an engineer and to also help my community in some way. And the point that I also wanted to make is that my perspective is probably a little different from the other panelists. I don't have my own startup. I'm not building this product, but it's more about thinking, you know, instead of like building this, you know, Instagram for Muslims, how can we make Instagram and how can we make these products that exist that we're using more inclusive of Muslims? And so, yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Mashallah, mashallah.
Too much at once.
No, you're good. Mashallah, that's amazing. SubhanAllah. That's really interesting to see how like a corporate company like Facebook can connect with masajid and smaller communities within the Muslim Ummah. Quick question: do you work on the charity team on Facebook, or you do something completely different?
Oh, that's like my side job right now. I work on messenger privacy, so I was spending like 90% of my time on that, 20% on, you know, that the work that was really fulfilling to me, which was supporting these other teams.
Gotcha. Mashallah, it's really interesting how you kind of, you know, even though you're doing something completely mutually exclusive from working for the community or helping the community, you're still able to take advantage of the opportunity of being in that space. Mm-hmm. So our next panelist, Atif, would you be able to give us a spiel about what you do?
Yeah. Hey, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Nadah, by the way, that's awesome what you did. Like, really good job, and congratulations on making that so cool. I really like the part about how you had to explain to them not to write it like the translation, right? Just the transliteration. People will get it. That's super cool. So hey, everyone. My name is Atif Javed. I am the co-founder of Tarjimly, which is a technology nonprofit that we started 3 years ago in the Bay Area. So I'm going to talk about two things that I've been working on that are kind of connected to the Muslim community. I've been very involved since I graduated from MIT in 2015 out here in the Bay Area with Muppies, especially. And I think Minterns has kind of been the cool, young, hip offshoot of Muppies, which has been like the old guard of the Muslim community in some ways. So really happy to spend some time talking with all of you, and great job with setting up UmmaHacks as well. So the two things I wanted to talk about were the projects that I've done. One is Tarjimly. For those who speak Arabic, it means translate for me. It's a technology nonprofit designed to help refugees and humanitarians get access to volunteer translators and interpreters. So probably most of this room today here is bilingual in some way, and with Tarjimly, you can sign up and become a volunteer interpreter translator for refugees in need around the world. So I actually started this when I first graduated from MIT. I was working in product management. I was at Oracle, and then I was at AJ Plus, which is like Al Jazeera Digital, and that got me really passionate about the refugee crisis, especially with what was happening in Greece and Turkey at the time. We went and volunteered in refugee camps there, and you can see the difficulties on the ground. And one of those difficulties that stood out, especially when you see, it's kind of incredible, like the presence of Muslims providing humanitarian support is quite low in those type of refugee camps, especially in European countries, like specifically like Greece, Turkey, Italy, France. There's not a huge presence when it comes to the humanitarian Muslim community, but you would see, you know, literally like 20 different Christian organizations or even Jewish organizations on the ground providing humanitarian support. And for me and my co-founder Aziz, him and I are best friends at MIT, and we lived together in the Bay Area for a couple years after graduating. We looked at that and we were like, how do we get it so that more Muslims could be involved with providing that support? And we naturally turned to technology to kind of find that solution. So we launched a Facebook Messenger app to allow anyone to sign up and volunteer as a bilingual interpreter. And the vast majority of our like friends in the Muslim community, the Arab community especially, signed up. We had a couple thousand people sign up in a few days. And from there, we just kept growing and growing and growing it, and started to focus a lot on these humanitarian service providers. So people who are on the ground working with refugees, who would see maybe 100 refugees a day, but they don't speak Arabic, they don't speak Farsi, they don't speak Pashto, they don't speak Tigrinya, they don't speak any of the languages of people. How we could make their world more efficient and their support more efficient by providing the humanitarian support on the ground, the translation support for them. So I've been working on that for the last 3 years. I'm the executive director of the organization. Alhamdulillah, we've raised like close to $1 million over the last 3 years. We are a 5-person team now. I've been doing this for 2 years full time, quit my job and everything, which I think I'll speak to that a bit more potentially later, but it's a very different experience to go through like the notion and idea of supporting the Muslim community and, you know, in a side hustle or in kind of a side capacity versus doing it like full time. Like this is your job to like support refugees, support immigrants, support people in need. And especially with Tarjimly, a lot of the work is literally translated across crisis to crisis. It was the Syrian refugee crisis that started it, then it became the Rohingya crisis, then it was the border crisis, now it's the COVID crisis. And we just kind of span this, this need that consistently shows that our work is necessary. So it's really exciting to continue doing that work. But one of the other projects that I worked on, which I think might also be interesting for people to hear about, is Zakat.fyi, kind of a natural spin-off a lot of the FYI plays that Zuhayeer will tell you more about. He's kind of pioneered the .fyi movement in the Muslim community. So we started Zakat.fyi over this Ramadan. And this was actually like literally, I think it's so cool because it's exactly what you guys are doing with UmmaHacks today. It was literally a 2 to 3 week project. And we were like, we basically, in a thread of on WhatsApp with a couple of friends, I was like, hey, look, I don't know how to pay my zakah. It's been like 4 years. I still don't really know how to pay my zakah. Like, there's so many different things online and how to pay your zakah. It's complex when you have things like, you know, stocks and 401ks and you have real estate. Just the financial picture is not modern when it comes to a lot of these calculators online. And I feel like as a pillar of Islam, it's something that we should probably be paying attention to. It's probably something that at the very least, the people who work on this this platform or this calculator could learn how to calculate their zakat better. So like basically 5-6 of us, including Zuhayeer, you know, just said, all right, let's go ahead and build this application. You guys can check it out. It's basically a simple web app. You know, no fluff, no mess around. Just like here's what you need to know. And the important thing about Zakat.fyi was it's about teaching you, and less about just like here plug in your numbers. And like if you go to any of the zakat calculators, like what's your goal? Like I don't know what my goal is. How the hell do I calculate my goal? You know, like it's a lot of things like that where you need more explanation, you need more details. And we decided to ship this to basically try to get it out before the end of Ramadan. We started just ideating the week before. You know, 6 of us just over WhatsApp. You know, put some research together. You know, leverage some of Joe Bradford's methodology, and we shipped Zakat.fyi. And I think that was a very different experience from Tarjimly, which was like, you know, very slowly, methodically, well, start by shipping just the product. That's always the most important thing to do. But from there, kind of quickly building, you know, additional features, additional research, working on it for a longer period of time versus something that now is like kind of a side project, kind of something that we have ideas, we have like a roadmap that we'll work on, but it is something that we will slowly progress to adding more value to the Muslim community. So these are the 2 projects that I've worked on, and I'm open to get questions towards the end, but let's share everyone else's background too.
For sure, mashallah, yeah, Tarjimly is an incredible initiative, and it's really, really interesting how you've taken it from a side hustle for the just to do something for the community to something that, you know, you're doing full time as your entire career. Mashallah, I think that's really, really honorable. Abdellatif, our next panelist. Side note, if you are from the Bay Area or if you've driven past the Bay Area, you know Abdellatif. I one time met somebody who said that he's from the Bay Area, and I was like, do you know Abdellatif? He's like, no, I don't think he was actually from the Bay Area. So so anyway, Abdellatif, take it on.
Thank you, Shams. Yeah, I mean, on Atif's point, like I remember when they launched Tarjimly almost like 3 years ago, back when it was like a messenger app. And mashallah, like seeing Atif and the team go through like all the highs and lows of Tarjimly to the point that it reached today as an incredible product, mashallah. They did a great job. My name is Abdellatif, as Anas mentioned. I've lived in the Bay Area in the past like 6 years and recently moved to Norway. Most recently, I was an engineer at Twitter, and now I'm working on a project called Tarteel. Tarteel actually started from a Muslim hackathon 2 years ago, very similar to UmmaHacks, where a team of Muslims came together and decided to use machine learning to build an app that listens to people's recitation and corrects their mistake. So you can imagine just like pulling up an app, starting to recite like from your memorization, and if you make a mistake, the app will tell you what that mistake is. We started off in July of 2018, and one big challenge that we faced is the lack of training data to build this machine learning model. So you'll hear from Abu Bakr later today about like more of the machine learning workflows, but essentially to build a good machine learning model, you need to collect huge amounts of training data and train it for the model to be accurate. But for something like Quran recitation, there isn't really data available online from normal reciters. So we started something called the Tarteel challenge, where we asked people to just like go on this website, share with us their recitation to build a machine learning model. And we put it out in a few groups right after the hackathon. It went viral. We collected like 25,000 recitations. And then afterwards, people kept sharing it in multiple groups. And to date, we have over 250,000 recitation samples that we're using to train this machine learning model. Going from a hackathon project to a project that you work on at a larger scale does take some steps that I'll be talking about inshallah later in the panel. But what I want you to know is what you build in this hackathon could be something that can impact Muslims at a very, very large scale. Like to date, we got over 100,000 people use Tarteel. This number is growing, and as we're adding more features, we're seeing people like loving and using the product more. So do not underestimate what you can build in these 3 weeks.
Inshallah, Jazakallah khairan. Yeah, Tarteel is like a very, 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 it's a very interesting app. Like nobody has really taken Quran, outside of like a Quran Explorer type of app, nobody's taken the idea of Quran recitation, Quran memorization into machine learning and artificial intelligence. I think that's really interesting. Our next panelist, Abdelgawad, I apologize if I butchered your name. Can you tell us about what you do?
I'm actually a little disappointed that you butchered my name, because all the non-Arabs, non-Muslims tend to butcher my name. I didn't expect you to butcher my name.
I'm not Arab, but
no worries, no problem at all. Thanks for having me here today, and Jazakumullah khair for organizing this. And I appreciate the fact that I was never really involved with Minterns or UmmaHacks, but I do know Muhammad Ibrahim, one of the organizers over here. We actually grew up together in Saudi Arabia, and I might have had a different background than most people over here. Came to Canada in 2011, and one of the things that I was hoping to start talking about today, leading into my spiel, was the fact that just before I left Saudi Arabia, Muhammad's brother Yusuf and one of our friends' fathers were actually walking around just before we were heading out to Canada. And he came and told us that you guys are leaving Saudi Arabia. You've been living here your entire life, and you're representing your Muslim community. And make sure that when you go to Canada, that you represent the Muslim community in the best way possible. And when you get there, make sure that your education, everything that you've learned your entire life, make sure that you're leaving Canada, or if you're staying in Canada, that you have an impact, not just on Canada, but on everyone within your Muslim community. And that sort of stayed in my mind ever since I left. And it was something that I was thinking about the whole time. Came to Canada, started studying nanotechnology engineering at the University of Waterloo. And while I was going through undergrad, I sort of started thinking about different ways that I can potentially use that background to benefit myself, benefit my community, and those around me. And I was lucky while I was here studying, and while I was here, I actually met a good friend of mine right now. His name's Yusuf. He was also one of the people who came from Saudi, coincidentally, and we just met over here. And he started telling me about a problem that his mother faced at work, where she's essentially a surgeon, and she would be anxious about her patients post-operatively, not knowing if they're recovering well or if they're potentially suffering from a complication that everyone's blind to. And one night he was just having a conversation with his mother, and she told him that I'm worried about one of my patients, and I think we might have a better way to solve this. And given your background in nano engineering, you might actually be able to come up with a solution for this problem. So Yusuf came to me and approached me at the time. I was in China doing an internship. And as soon as I came back, we started talking about the problem. We started digging into it a little bit further. And we realized that a lot of patients tend to lose their lives because of a problem that goes undetected. Simply because they don't identify the complication early enough, the patient goes into a series of complications and problems after the surgery, and they end up losing their lives. And when I started thinking about it, if maybe we can develop a solution that can help tackle this problem, then we can at least have an impact on one person's life. And that's when the idea that our friend's father talked to us about resonated in my head. And that ayah from Surah Al-Ma'idah, where it says, "Man qatala nafsan bighayri nafsin أو فساد في الأرض فإنما قتل الناس جميعا ومن أحياها فمن كأنما أحيا الناس جميعا." So these thoughts started coming into my head, and I was like, let's maybe start working on a small project that might even turn into a startup idea at some point. And so it began, just myself and Yusuf, back in 2014. We started doing it as a side hustle, pretty much like what everyone over here was doing while going through undergrad. And slowly enough, we started getting enough traction around us from the university, from the startup ecosystem here in Waterloo in Canada. And we slowly started growing this startup idea into something that we felt would actually be able to deliver on a product that could create an impact on healthcare and on people's lives. Alhamdulillah, 6 years later, we also raised a few $1 million in funding. Right now, it's more of a full-time job that we are all operating on. We're a team of 14 individuals, as I mentioned. Grew the idea from just a simple concept right now into a product that is going through clinical studies. And I slowly started becoming more and more involved in the community over here, coming as an immigrant, coming as someone who never really was part of the community, whether on a small scale or the Muslim community within Ontario. It was obviously a challenge to integrate and to try to find the best way to connect with everyone. But alhamdulillah, over time, I think I started becoming a good representation and a member of the Muslim community and what a true Muslim within Canada here should look like. And just maybe speaking to some of the thoughts that the other panelists were talking about, last Ramadan, just before Ramadan started, we also came upon the realization that this Ramadan is going to be completely different and that we need to do something. So I joined a bunch of members from the community over here. We started what are known as virtual halaqas, where twice a week we would conduct halaqas, talking about tafsir, talking about different aspects related to Islam, and delivering that to the community over here. It was a small initiative. We managed to get 30, 35 people involved every single week. But alhamdulillah, we decided to also continue that. And post Ramadan right now, we're still doing these halaqas on a bi-weekly basis. So if anyone's interested as well in knowing more about that or about my startup journey or our startup journey and how you can get involved in the community, feel free to reach out at any point, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Jazakallah khair. Virtual halaqas are actually a really interesting idea, since they can involve not just people from a specific region, but they can you can be a part of other communities as well. And I think that's really interesting when we have people who want to take advantage of opportunities that are not available to them locally. So subhanAllah, that's really, really, really cool. Our final panelist, Zuhayeer, would you be able to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Fascinating to kind of hear everyone's stories on the panel so far. It's really amazing. And I think, my project, which is levels.fyi, and what levels.fyi is it's like a salary transparency tool to help you kind of compare offers and get paid fairly. It's a similar story in that, like, we also started off as a side project, around 3 years ago, and eventually, became kind of my full-time job. Just as like a little story for how we kind of got started, like around 3 years ago, I was thinking about my career after college in my junior year summer, and I was talking to a friend named Zuhayeer about who Zuhayeer was in the workplace already, so he was already kind of familiar with how kind of the tech kind of career works, and he jumped from LinkedIn to Amazon, and found this kind of whole idea of leveling. And if you're not familiar with kind of leveling in the tech world, it's basically kind of a way to codify your scope and responsibility in a certain level or role within a company. And, you know, the levels don't always translate one-to-one across companies, and hence the reason for our site. So we realized, you know, a lot of people, we were kind of looking up this kind of notion of, you know, how leveling works. And a lot of people had questions along the lines of, you know, if I'm a L3 at Google, what does that translate to at Facebook, or what does that translate to at Airbnb? And, you know, people were asking that, like, you know, every other day on like these active forums. And we realized that, you know, we could create a simple visual tool to kind of solve this problem for people so that they're not under leveled. And, you know, that's still like a common practice today, where, you know, companies have like it's basically a malpractice where they down level folks and you know, these levels are kind of intentionally left obscure for people so that, you know, they can do that. And so we started building out this visualization for kind of all these companies. And we literally started with 3 companies. It was Google, Facebook, and Microsoft. And you could kind of just see the levels across it. And those were kind of like the 3 most mature companies that we thought we could kind of accommodate for. And, you know, like I like to think of it as like, you know, our whole website was basically a thing you could print as a PDF, and that was our entire product. And kind of going from that to kind of just adding a lot more companies, and then eventually even adding compensation information, and, you know, just a lot of details around like what candidates have to offer, like even exploring the gender wage gap. And we're also like working on publishing kind of like a racial or a report broken down by race on compensation as well. And I think it's been interesting, like just kind of so I've been working on levels.fyi for full time for around a year now. So me and Zuhayeer, we both kind of came full time. We decided, you know, this is something we just kind of have to do as things kind of grew organically. And we realized, you know, there's a lot of opportunity in this space to kind of just help equal the playing field for, you know, job seekers and, you know, candidates who are looking to kind of, you know, transfer across different companies. And I know Atif mentioned zakat.fyi earlier, and it's funny because you know, we really thought that was important, like, and, you know, that's something that needed to exist. And even so, before a tax calculator, we like for levels.fyi, we haven't even created a tax calculator or anything like, you know, around tax or cost of living yet, but we built the zakat calculator. And it's just something I joke about to people, is like, you know, we built that first. But yeah, like some things that were some recent developments that I'll just throw out in case it's useful for people. We kind of built like a total compensation calculator for people to map out their kind of compensation and potential growth over 4 years. If you go to levels.fyi/calculator, it's been helpful for some folks to kind of just compare their offers and be able to kind of understand, you know, which piece goes where, and like, you know, how your stock package might split out over time, especially if you have like an odd vesting schedule, things like that. And yeah, a lot of people have found it useful, and, you know, I'm sure I can talk a little bit more about it if anybody has any more questions specifically around that.
Gotcha, mashallah. That's actually really, really interesting how you've kind of created like a better version of Glassdoor, more or less, just kind of using your experience within the industry. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but I think that's actually really interesting. And then you've worked on zakat.fyi, and then creating that before a tax calculator is actually, I feel like tax calculator and a cost of living calculator is a lot more complex. But as a calculator is also pretty complex. Jazakallah khairan, Zuhayeer. Zuhayeer is also a Berkeley alum. I think that's just important to know as a incoming Berkeley student. Anywho, so Atif, I'm going to start with you. What made you want to tackle the specific problem that you contributed to, and what were some issues that you faced? I know you discussed this a little bit during your intro.
For Tarjimly specifically, I mean, the thing is, I feel like in life you can always go work on the problems that people give you, but then to figure out for yourself what's the most important thing that you would like to work on, what you're going to be passionate about, what you're going to bring your most to the table. For me, I was always like, what's the biggest problem that I could work on? And I figured, okay, the refugee crisis is literally the biggest thing that I could possibly work on in my life. And that's kind of the main reason that I went after it. The other reason was because my grandmother, obviously, she didn't speak any English when she came to this country. So me and my family members, we'd always interpret for her. And like every immigrant kid kind of knows that story. They all kind of fall into the role of being the interpreter, being the translator for their family. But the third big reason was actually because I was making something with like my best friend, and it was also it just happened to work. And that's actually really the reason that we even got, accepted into YC. And YC was the reason that we, quit our jobs full time to work on this full time, because that opportunity was just so great in terms of the return. But it was a totally different story when I had tried to sort of make side projects with people I kind of didn't really know, or I didn't know much about, but I had some other connection to the people that I was working on this project with. So that was a big reason that we kept taking it forward. But the reason that we continued with it after so long, the reason that it didn't just become like a side thing that died out after like 4 or 5 months, was because we were working on the problem that we like every day I wake up and I'm like proud to be working on that problem as opposed to anything else. And what was the second question that you asked?
What were some issues that you faced?
Oh God, what issues did we not face? That's the question. The biggest issue we did run into, and I'm curious to hear Abdellatif also touch on this, was like that decision between going for profit and nonprofit. And I have a lot of like feelings about this, but generally speaking, because we were doing a service that we wanted to enable everyone around the world to be a part of, it was kind of volunteer driven. It had a very strong social mission behind it. We ended up going the nonprofit direction, and alhamdulillah, we were able to still raise money. We were able to still, have a big impact, still build a team, but it was just way harder than I feel like it could have been going down a for-profit direction if we had a very clear sense of who we were building the product for. And that's kind of that juncture which happened, this last year, where we started to really focus in on enabling the humanitarian providers as opposed to going direct to the refugees themselves. And there's a whole host of reasons why we did that, which I don't have to get into right now. But I think like for me, in my opinion, the biggest thing that kind of cripples a lot of Muslim projects that are awesome, by the way, like I've seen amazing things come out of like hackathons, side projects that my friends are working on. The biggest thing is being able to have that level of consistency and commitment to that idea to be able to see it out. Like there's some, especially when you're deep in sort of the tech space, you realize like a lot of these products, I mean, even at YC, like our like mentor was the founder of Twitch, and he was like, yeah, we just like didn't do anything for like 3 years, basically. We literally just worked on iterating on Twitch for like 2 to 3 years, like 5 guys in a house. And it was like, it's just incredible to see how much like consistency and commitment it takes to actually make a good product work. And I think you hit like an initial, excitement point in the beginning. And then you're like, oh, wow, we have users. Oh, wow, this is all working. And then when you start to hit roadblocks around features, like the product needs, all these types of things start to come together. Even just like build or buy, right? Like this was a big thing for us. Like we consistently tried to build things from the beginning, and that was a huge mistake. A huge mistake was we could have very easily moved much faster in the beginning if we decided to just buy certain tools instead of constantly trying to build things from scratch because we didn't have money. We're like, let's, it'll be easier to build it. But the reality is when you do proper like product development in the field, like nothing is as easy as someone else who's taking care of that service for you. So there was a lot of things around that. Yeah, and then even fundraising from a nonprofit side, like it was also very hard to go through YC as a nonprofit, where everyone around you is raising like millions of dollars, and we're like, pretty much YC is not a fit for nonprofits at all. We had to find a lot of other avenues around grant making and funding and stuff to be able to sustain and grow as an organization. Yeah, I think that's a couple of big issues. I'm sure I'll think of more, but those are the biggest.
Gotcha, subhanAllah. Abdellatif, what made you want to tackle the specific problem you have contributed to, and what issues did you face?
Yeah, so for us, I was one of a few co-founders. MashaAllah, the team is all dedicated and working really hard on it. We had this idea from, I'd say 2016 even, to build this machine learning model that listens to people's station and identify their mistakes. But the problem is that at the time, the technology wasn't mature. So even if you did want to build it, you wouldn't have supporting models that can build it for you. 2018 was a perfect time where the technology was out there, our team was ready, and it was something we would have like used growing up, memorizing the Quran. I remember like many times I would be memorizing a section and not having a Quran teacher next to me, and I would be memorizing something incorrectly, and I keep memorizing it incorrectly over and over again. And this process would have been so much easier if I had like an app to help me in this process. We faced a lot of challenges, and still today, we still do face many challenges. Some of the challenges we faced early days is in the data collection part. So to build a machine learning model that works well, you need to collect recitations from like normal Muslims or like normal reciters, people like you and myself, because all the data available online is for professional reciters. And the problem is that these professional reciters have a very high level of tajweed and have no background noise. So if you build a machine learning model using their data, if any of us use it, it wouldn't work well. So we said, okay, we want to collect data on like how normal people recite. And we got a lot of excitement, but the early phases, the data was mostly from Egypt, and it was mostly from male reciters. So if we were to train the machine learning model just based on this data, if, for example, a female from Nigeria is to use a model, it wouldn't work well for her. So we did a lot of initiatives to try to diversify the data input so that it works for the general Muslim population. And I think at this point we have about 96% accuracy for the data that we receive, which is just pretty good for an ML model, and so on.
SubhanAllah. Nadah, so your work is a little bit different. However, what made you want to talk about a specific problem at Facebook, and what issues have you faced? I know you discussed, trying to explain to the PM about why Alhamdulillah is a lot better than thank God. So could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. So kind of the way I started out was just saying, Ramadan this year was going to be different, and just looking and at least thinking about what would be the immediate struggle that our community would be facing and what our messages would be facing. And I didn't want to speculate and think that, this is going to be a problem. So initially I was kind of just talking to people in the community that I knew, talking to my masjid and the leaders that I knew there. And then Abdellatif might laugh about this, but last year there was actually an event I think that Minterns hosted with Imam Umar Sulaiman. And I remember talking to him then, and I got his email somehow. And so it was this week before Ramadan when I was like, I need to see like if people need help, with these things, with reaching their community, with fundraising. So I sent an email to Imam Umar. I wasn't really expecting a response, but and I was just kind of talking about, Ramadan's going to be virtual. Like, what are you guys, thinking about? What are going to be some of your struggles? Fundraising was something at the top of my mind. And he responded within the hour, and he was like, yeah, let's talk. Fundraising is a big deal for us. It's a big deal for a lot of the community. And then the day after, we had like a Zoom call with the whole Yaqeen Institute team. And so then I was like, okay, then this actually seems like it is a problem. Like what can we do now as, with my position at Facebook to try to help? And like I said, a lot of that was also just communicating what these issues were and what we can do. And like the biggest struggle, honestly, was feeling like sometimes I was just screaming into the void. Like, I'm an engineer here, first of all. Like, why are they going to take what I say, seriously? Like, I'm basically telling the PMs, this is what you should be building. I'm telling the content strategists, this is what you should be doing. But being at Facebook is different because you have a lot of agency. Like, as an engineer, even, I was, the only Muslim voice in this space. So like I said, they kind of had to take my word for it. And eventually it was just pushing. Like, I couldn't wait until like they asked me, what do you guys need? I had to tell them like, this is what we need and this is what you guys should be doing. The whole workshop that we did with the Shura Council, this wasn't initiated from Facebook or the Shura Council. It was me saying, okay, is this something that you guys would be interested in? Do you want to learn how to use Facebook? They said yes. I went to the PMs and to the marketing managers at Facebook, and I was like, okay, could you guys talk about this? And then setting it up that way. So I couldn't wait until they were going to do something about it. I had to say, like, this was a problem, we should be doing this, and somehow getting people on board and like building up that credibility. So yeah.
Gotcha. That's really, really, really cool how you've kind of like facilitated everything between people who could say no to you on either end.
You just kind of have to deal with the rejection sometimes.
Gotcha. SubhanAllah. Zuhair, what are some, what made you want to tackle a specific problem you contributed to, and what are some issues that you faced?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me and Zuhair, for trying to work on levels.fyi, I think we were really initially just trying to solve our own problem. We were kind of confused about the leveling and compensation kind of practices in the industry, and Glassdoor didn't capture like any of that really properly, and it was really hard to kind of just get a sense for where compensation was and at what level, and what level reflects like certain compensation ranges and stuff like that. So we started off building this kind of almost as a repository for ourselves. So and I was kind of like in college at the time. I was a junior in Berkeley, and I was just thinking about where can I go as a new grad and start as like an engineer and have like decent compensation, and what are the best benefits at like at different companies and things to kind of look out for. And I had no idea. So that's why I was talking to Zuhair in the first place. And we realized like we quickly realized like a lot of people actually don't have the grasp in this space on information, just in general, on kind of career kind of movement. And so we decided to kind of just build a simple tool, as I mentioned, like a visualization of like the leveling as a beginning. And quickly from there, we started building a lot of just different tools and features around it. And I think one issue kind of we dealt with around that is that, I think there is like a power law in product, like kind of, or the power law of distribution of product. Like there is a product that you build, there will be like, if you build like multiple products, and if you're somewhat successful in anything, there'll be one area where you succeed like pretty highly in. And I feel like for us that was like leveling. Like we were like, that's why people came to the site. People came to the site to kind of view the leveling and view kind of like the ranges and see where people transfer to. And I like to tell people about like there's so many things on the website that people have not seen, and there are probably pages that people here will probably never see, and there are a lot of projects that we've scrapped on our way here. And I think relentlessly prioritizing is actually super important, and it's something that we've had to learn along the way, because people don't care about like a random thing that you build that like with some charts or whatever. They care about like what they care about, which in our case is like the leveling and compensation. And as we realize that, we realize as you go through kind of different periods of growth, that power law will shift to different products, right? Like it's still leveling for us, but maybe that goes into us kind of helping people make better career decisions in general. Like the total compensation calculator in that regard is also an experiment, like how we can help people. And and another issue that we kind of came into while working on this was, people generally didn't trust self-reported information. I feel like people are kind of skeptical of it. And, that's also in large part why, Glassdoor is not trusted as much, is because, it's all kind of from employees, and it's not as verified information as, you can get from on the enterprise side. Like, for example, with things like Radford and, Connery, they'll give you like kind of verified information. But we kind of wanted to meld those two worlds where, we should have self-reported information because that's important, because employees are going to be willing to contribute that, but we can ground it in some truth of, having verified information. And so we started collecting like, offer letters and W-2 statements from employees to kind of, benchmark our self-reported data. And, and our self-reported data in general is actually pretty accurate. Like I was surprised myself, because I thought like people would be spamming and people would be entering like a lot of bad data, but it's it's a relatively long form, I guess, and if people have bad faith, they're probably not willing to go through with it, but which kind of like it just incentivizes good behavior in a sense. But we've noticed like in general, like our data has been kind of great, and like even companies use it because they realize like when they go to our website and they look at their company on our webpage, they notice that it's accurate. So they're like, okay, then the other companies on here must be accurate too. And so, you know, and establishing that trust, like, you know, visually, or like, allowing, like, basically displaying that trust to users is very different from, you know, just saying, hey, you know, this information is accurate. So we kind of, you know, created this verified arm where we have like a bunch of different pieces of compensation that, you know, we can actually verify through, you know, official kind of documents, and use that to kind of just as ground truth, essentially. And I think that was like a big problem initially, but, you know, we're starting to tackle it more, and hopefully, you know, close the loop on just melding those two worlds where we have verified information and self-reported information, and you can make your own judgment based on the verified info.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Kind of having to gauge these things, which are typically, or at times, like concealed behind like NDAs, and people don't really like to talk about how much money they make, and like having that become something that's like public, is a really nuanced like issue. So it's really interesting how you've kind of emerged that into what Levels has become. Is that pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah, you got it right this time.
What made you want to tackle the specific problem they have contributed to, and what were the issues that you faced?
Yeah, I just must say Abdellatif's background is absolutely phenomenal. I can't stop looking at it. As I touched on this a little bit earlier when I was first giving my introduction, there were a few factors. First of all, leaving Saudi Arabia and coming to Canada, as I mentioned, I always wanted to have this impact and make sure that I can at least have some sort of impact on one person's life, if even possible. So that was part of it. Another part of it was the fact that my mom is also a physician. So growing up, I would hear stories from her, from people within her work, about issues that they would face with patients, sometimes being concerned about patients' livelihood in general and how they can recover after certain diseases or complications after procedures. All of that became part of why I started doing what I did. And when Yusuf came and approached me and told me about the problem, it became clear in my head, at least, that if we have the right tools within our toolbox, our background, our education, our knowledge, everything that we've been learning for the past few years, if we can put that to use, then why not? And even though it sort of came as a coincidence, it was also part of my my thinking and thought process that I should be working on something that should have an impact on people's lives. What that looked like at the time, it wasn't clear in my head, but when an opportunity came in front of me, I decided to start working on it. So that's sort of what encouraged me to get involved and start working on NERv as a company.
Gotcha. SubhanAllah, that's really, really interesting. Atif, I know you have to head out soon. So just before you leave, what is one piece of practical advice you would give to someone starting out in creating something as a resource to the Muslim community?
His best piece of advice is, I think the thematic thing you're seeing here is like people are tackling a lot of the problems that they're facing themselves, whether it was Levels or Zuhayeer, or there's some story that ties you to the work that you feel committed to and work on for a long time. So anything that's kind of tied to something that you yourself is facing as a problem. There's a great example of this actually. I found this, it's nothing related to what everyone's doing here, but I was having trouble kind of getting stats on the prayers that I was making and missing, or praying and praying late. And so I found this app actually on the App Store called Salah Diary, and you can literally check off the salahs that you've prayed, and then it gives you stats on those salahs. So actually one big thing also, which I find people skip over, is they tend to not research and figure out if other people have worked on this before. And I think this is actually one of the coolest things about Tarteel, which was like, I think they're the only like Muslim tech product that acquired another like Muslim tech product, which I think is amazing. I think that's actually emblematic of what we should be doing, where we actually like figure out how to work together more. And you know, the cool thing is about that is like they're working on a similar problem, and they found a way to merge paths. What was the company, Abdellatif? Was it Quran Companion, or who was it?
It's Iqra.
Iqra. So Iqra was working on the same thing. They had a mobile app, very similar like product line that they were going down. And a lot of people don't realize how many other people are doing this stuff. In fact, we were maybe halfway through building Zakat.fyi before we found out about ZakChat, which is like a chat bot for filling out your Zakat stuff. So two of the big things is, one, find the thing that you are facing as a problem the most, and then go work on something like that, because you will find the most like fire in you to continue working on it. And then two is find who's already working on that, and that will take time to actually research. And I actually try now to never touch anything until I've like exhaustively researched who's worked on it. Because if you have that problem or that idea has been out there, then you will find someone who's tried to work on it. Doesn't necessarily mean that they've done it well. Doesn't necessarily mean that they've marketed it well. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the best solution out there. You should still potentially work on it, but you will actually find great synergies and support by finding what other people have already worked on in that space. So I think those are two key lessons that people kind of skip over a lot in the beginning phases.
Gotcha. Jazakallah khairan. I really don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you so much. I believe you had put your contact information or something for people to reach out to you, or can you put something for people to reach out to you, if it's okay, just in the chat, and say salam to Iqra.
Yeah, we'll do. All right, guys. Assalamu alaikum. Thanks.
All right, salam wa rahmatullah. Abdellatif, what are some problems or challenges you see in that the Muslim community is facing that can be solved by technology or through technology? It's a heavy question.
I'd actually maybe take a step back, and I would say like a lot of the problems like do not need to be solved by technology, and many times us as engineers like have an inclination towards solving a problem with technology that can be solved without technology. Particularly, I feel like many times people would like to re-implement or like build a website from scratch, when you can just like have like a simple Airtable and pull data from it, instead of having like a database, or just having like putting a Google Doc and making it public. Like many times you do not need to build a technology product. I can give an example of this. So one of the hackathons I've attended, I built a product called the Bay Area Onboarding Guide. So a lot of Muslims come to the Bay Area. They do not have family, they do not know anyone, and they find it really difficult to get to know about like the community, where the masjids are, where the events are, and kind of onboard to the community. So one approach would have been spending like 2-3 weeks building a website and like coding it all in HTML and putting the resource out there. But what I did in the hackathon is I literally went to a Notes app, like wrote all the onboarding information, like this is where you find the masjid, this is where you find the groups, and so on, exported it as HTML, hosted the HTML in like all in like less than a day. And like so far, I want to guess like it's been used by over like 10,000 Muslims in the Bay Area. And like all of this was like done in less than a day. So I would first of all take a step back and see, how do you solve this problem, like aside from technology? The other thing I want to say that many times engineers like spend a lot of time building a very refined product before getting it out there. It is very important to just build like an MVP, which is a minimum viable product, that you can build like quickly, ideally like in 1 or 2 weekends, get it out and start getting feedback. Because I've seen people many times like spend months working on a product, they get it out and then like no one wants to use it, or it's like not sustainable long term. So these are 2 pieces of feedback I would advise, especially if you're working on this hackathon. Try to abstract away more technology and focus more on how you would solve this problem.
Gotcha. Jazakallah khairan for that insight and taking a step back. Nadah, what are problems that you've seen in the Muslim that our communities are facing, and how can technology contribute towards solving those?
So first of all, I just want to +1 to what Abdellatif said, because I think as tech people, as engineers, we're so focused on building something that you don't actually think if this is something that needs to be built, and if there's not a way technology can solve this, thinking about how else you can use your position maybe in the tech industry or being a technical person, how you can support your community. So I think as a whole, everyone on this panel is solving some big problems for the Muslim community. And I just kind of want to make the point that it can be overwhelming, and going into this hackathon, You don't have to go in thinking that you're going to build this app that's going to solve, you know, the problems for the whole ummah, but thinking about some of the small things that you can do. And I'm a big proponent of grassroots efforts. So it's like there are some small steps that you can take and some really small things that you can do that'll have like a big overall impact, and not neglecting those things. And you know, possibly starting out with those, there's small wins that you can have, and then learning from the community once you do a couple of things what the actual needs are and building off of that. So just don't underestimate what you can do in your position. And being in tech, I do think that we are in, you know, positions of privilege compared to, you know, other people.
Abdellatif, how have you worked with the community around you to create change? Using Tarteel, for example, and connecting with the network that you have, how have you connected with the people that you know, and by extension, people that they know, into growing Tarteel?
Good question. So when I was in the Bay Area, I was fairly involved, alhamdulillah, with the Muslim community. I think this was a great chance to get like some of the best engineers to join our team and work together on Tarteel. But I would say like in any product in general, once you build it, you want to work closely with the users and get their feedback. For Tarteel, many of our core users are parents and Quran teachers. So being in constant loop with them, just like know you're available to get their feedback at any time, does help. I would say also like as Muslims, and if you want to build like products for the sake of Allah, like that does not only include like building products for the Muslim community. Like there are a lot of communities right now that are vulnerable, or there are a lot of people that you can build technology to help them. Like for example, international students right now, like many of them are facing the crisis of getting deported. Like finding how you can use your skill set to help a community in need can go a long way. And I've seen like many times like Muslim would just like put themselves in the area where they're just like building products for the Muslim community, which is great because like we're certainly like lacking behind in terms of technology, but also like don't shy away from like building technology that helps people in general.
Got it. The next question is kind of a question for anyone who wants to kind of hop in. So for this hackathon, people can basically create whatever they want. However, we incentivize hackers to create within 3 particular tracks, one being mental health, the second being humanitarian issues, and the third being community and organizational development. So is there anything in particular you guys have seen in any of these 3 and any of these three tracks that have already been created, or any ideas you guys have that can help give insight for our hackers?
I'll chime in over here. Maybe I don't have any particular idea off the top of my mind, but one thing that I'd like to say is that right now we're living in a different time, in a challenging time for pretty much most of us. Some of us might be living on our own as well, away from our own families. And we've seen a lot of cases specifically around mental health issues, whether they be depression or the fact that you're not engaging with a lot of people within your own community. The social aspect of your life is gone. So there are a lot of opportunities right now to focus on that element in particular. And if maybe you can try to develop a solution around that, or maybe come up with an idea to help make or ease life for some people, then I'd say focus on that. That's probably an area of focus on an area that there will be a lot of opportunities that can arise from. So I'd say maybe tackle that if you can, at least right now, and put the context of what's going on around the world right now, the pandemic, and how we're isolated from each other, so that you can try to develop a solution around that problem.
Anybody else? I just put the 3 tracks inside the chat if you guys were wondering. I think the third one's really interesting, in particular, just a little bit of insight. So our communities are typically run by like an older community when it comes to like organizational and masajids and what have you. And I think utilizing technology in that sense would be one way of kind of changing the way our communities are organized. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think I would echo what said actually. I mean, and I think it goes hand in hand with the community and kind of organizational development. Right now, like, I think it's actually much cheaper for, like, I guess, like, anybody to kind of lend their time to an event because it's virtual, or like you don't have to have a physical location. So like in a lot of ways, some things are, the silver lining is things are kind of easier to kind of coordinate. So I think, recognizing that opportunity to kind of, build something around that to kind of, I guess, amplify these efforts in some way, would be interesting for sure. And, and in some way it could be like, a new way that, continues after, things kind of settle back to normal, inshallah. Right. So like, I think there's just a lot of opportunity there around, just, like, especially within this time, like figuring out what the silver lining is and how you can kind of, build around that. I mean, I also kind of wanted to touch on just like echo kind of everyone's points from, before on just like in general advice. Like, I think what Abdellatif said, especially about like, over engineering and not over engineering things, like as an example, also like levels.fyi like completely runs off of like Google Sheets, which is, and to this day, and it's like, it's just something we didn't have to really change. Like it works, and it works effectively. So we might as well do that. I also want to say like, like I think like people having a fresh mindset, and that's why I really love hackathons, is like, you're kind of like, you're just going to go kind of perpendicular into this problem and try to like do something, right? And it's like it gives way to this kind of naiveness, and you have this kind of outsider mindset, and you're just coming into like try and solve something, and I think there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of like power in being able to like basically come in with a fresh perspective and like almost kind of topple like incumbent things that are just forced upon us and that we just take for granted right now. Like we're just like, oh, this is how things work. But like it takes people like coming in like and building completely new things for that to kind of topple. And like as an example for us, like we sort of like in the back of our minds all knew that Glassdoor wasn't sufficient, but like we still used it, and we still all kind of that was the solution that everyone kind of went with, and no one like not many people thought like to question that and like think of, okay, there has to be a better way. And when we did, it just became sort of obvious after the fact, right? And I think in a lot of ways a lot of things work like that. So I think not being afraid to kind of just put that first step forward and just build stuff, and iterate, as Abdellatif said too, because I've been through that personally. Like I built stuff for months on end, and no one wants it at the end. But I mean, it was part of the learning process. And like something I think they say in YC is like we will say all these like this advice is like words coming out of my mouth, but usually people just have to go through it and realize for themselves in some ways. But hopefully we gave you some sort of warning. But but yeah. Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to echo like what everyone else has said so far. I think it's been some great advice.
For sure, yeah. Abdellatif?
Yeah, so I've attended a bunch of hackathons, and I've seen like a small subset of the projects end up being projects that people work on long term. And what I found common in these projects are two things. One is an idea that you're passionate about. So if you are working on this hackathon on a project, like make sure you choose an idea that you care deeply about, you're willing to go far and continue working on it, because this is really like how you're going to like take this beyond the hackathon. Second piece of advice I would give is you have like 2 weeks, right? In this hackathon?
About 2.5 weeks, yeah.
2.5 weeks, okay, perfect. You have 2.5 weeks. Use this as an opportunity to talk with as many people as you can about the product. So if you are building a product for masjids, try to speak with as many community members of masjids, people on the board, masjid attendees. Try to even like speak with like other attendees about their experience, and share with them like your product. Like you can go and tell them, hey, we are planning to solve this problem, is something that you would use, is how big is a pain point? For example, would you be willing to pay for this? And try to get validation as much as you can, like during this hackathon. Because like best case scenario is you would finish the hackathon with a good orientation, knowing like this is what we want to build and this is what we want to take forward. And you can use this as a time to validate your idea.
Gotcha. Nadah, did you want to touch up on this, or Amr, or yeah? Sorry.
Yeah, I can kind of build off of that. So kind of the idea of maybe having like this product idea and bringing it to the masjids to see if this is something that they would use. I would kind of flip that, and like I envision a world where like as this generation we're more embedded in our communities and in our masajids. And I've been thinking a lot about this recently with, if anyone here is from the Bay Area, there's this effort of reforming MCA. This isn't the conversation for that, but just the idea that we want more of the youth and more of our generation involved. And then from that, more naturally, there'll be, you know, ideas that we have of how we can solve these problems instead of coming as like these external people and saying, this is what I think you guys might need. Instead, if we are like really embedded in our community, then we'll like, see what are some things that we can build that would benefit them the most. And so that's just kind of the perspective that I have. And hopefully that's what will kind of bring our community and our messages more, you know, more comfortable with using technology to reach the community in this time, you know, with COVID and everything. It's not going to be the same, you know, since we aren't physically there. And so for us being there just as resources for our community is really important.
Gotcha. Amr, I saw that you unmuted for a second, so I wanted to get back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch on both points that Abdellatif and Zuhayeer talked about when it comes to making or developing your MVP and at the same time involving your users. And especially if you're working on a new product or in the startup world, you want to make sure that you're developing something at the end of the day that the people need. But at the same time, you don't want to overdevelop it and continue to over iterate on it, where it takes you a very long time until you get one specific product out to the market. So make sure that you're moving fast, you're being lean, while at the same time involving as many stakeholders as possible. And I'd like to give an example about one mistake that we did, especially when it comes to the medical device space and how regulated such an environment is. It's sometimes difficult to get the feedback that you need from the different stakeholders. So from our perspective, for example, we had physicians, nurses, patients, regulators, hospital administrators. All of these are the different stakeholders that are involved in the decision-making process for developing such a product. But one thing that we did not necessarily do right the first time is that we didn't get the feedback from all of these different stakeholders. And we assumed that just getting the feedback from the physicians would be sufficient. And this is one thing that we had to learn the hard way. It took us probably 3 years developing a product that we thought was the right product, delivering it to help solve the problem that we were tackling it, when in fact, it would have taken that product probably 10, 15 years to get regulated and get to market. So from that angle, from that perspective, we never really understood the regulator's endpoint and the regulator's perspective on the product. So we had to go back again to the drawing boards and pretty much redevelop our product. So just being nimble and moving fast enough while at the same time getting the right feedback can be a difficult thing to manage. So just make sure you be able to balance both out as you're trying to get to market.
Got it. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting insight in regards to like product development and working with the market that or the industry that you're building in. SubhanAllah. Before we get into Q&A, just want to go through all of you guys one more time. What is one piece of practical advice that you would give somebody starting out? It could be in starting out and creating something for the Muslim community, or just creating something in general, or creating change in the space that they're in. I'm going to start with Nadah.
Sure. So I think I already touched on this before, but it's just don't underestimate some small things that you can do that'll have, you know, a larger impact. So just starting somewhere.
Zuhayeer?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I touched on this like previously, but like, yeah, I think just building out, as Abdellatif mentioned, like, you know, kind of, and Amr as well, like, you know, building out an MVP, and also Nadah, like just starting out somewhere and, you know, like tackling some corner of something that could be big. And I think not worrying about whether it could be big is kind of an important factor in there. Like, I feel like people get caught up too much in like, oh, these are like grand visions when they're starting out. But, you know, you kind of want to, you know, just be like a tinker in the beginning and then, you know, start to develop those visions as you go. And that's sort of how it happened for us. I mean, you know, like it, and I mean, I am a little biased in that it started off as a side project and something that kind of eventually became full-time. But you know, I think that's usually an effective way, and it leads you to kind of like insights, like things that you don't want to overlook things when you're starting out, because those are the key differentiators in your product, and eventually matriculate into like whatever it becomes, right? And so I think just you know, kind of keeping that in mind and just being open to kind of how things might change, and not having too much like, you know, set in stone in your head for how like, you know, your product might look. And just, yeah, like listening to your users, I think is, you know, super underrated. Like we can say that a million times, but it's still going to be underrated. Like listening to who you're building for is like probably the most important thing you could do. And just being able to understand that and fully kind of you know, envelop your product around that is really important. And yeah, and I mean, once again, I think like as a quick practical feedback, it's just like, you know, build side projects. Like even outside of this hackathon, like this hackathon doesn't have to be your only excuse to do things. You can do things outside of it. You can do things whenever, like, and whenever you see something, do it.
Gotcha. Jazakallah khairan. Abdellatif?
Practical advice I would give, you have 2.5 weeks to build a product. Find a product that you can build in 1 week, because people always underestimate how long things take and bugs come like through. So you don't want to be like spending like the last 2 days like without sleeping, just like writing code. Find something you will finish in a week, spend the rest of the time polishing it, and try to have clear steps on what you would do afterwards to take it to that grand vision.
Great. And Amr?
Everything takes twice as much time and double as amount the money that you're going to spend on it. I agree with that, Abdellatif. But in terms of practical advice I'd give, maybe not just in relation to this hackathon, but generally when you're working on a new project, I think team is probably one of the most important things that you need to focus on. It's great to try to get involved with your friends to build out something, and it's good to see them happy and passionate and really excited and eager to work on something. But at the same time, make sure that you're actually building a team that is strong enough, that is well suited to tackle the problem that you're going after. Diversifying your team as much as possible is also great from that aspect. And make sure you involve other people outside your community who might have the right skill set. Don't just focus and look within your own community. And being really passionate about what you're working on is very important, because you're going to face obstacles, roadblocks along the way. And to be honest, if you're not passionate enough about what you're trying to solve, sometimes these roadblocks can sort of bring you down and prevent you from continuing. So make sure that you have the fire inside of you, you're passionate about what you're doing, and that you can take it on no matter what problems you face.
Gotcha. We're gonna wrap up in about 10 minutes, inshallah. Some questions we have from people who are here live is, how do you get these ideas monetized? So for example, if you're offering something for free, how do you make money? Zuhair, I think I want to start with you on that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, for levels.fyi right now, we have like homepage advertisements. So I think we've reached like, you know, a point in traffic where, you know, that's meaningful for us. And obviously you have to, I think, get to a certain point where advertisements make sense if you don't have a product of your own. But I think it, you know, being intentional about advertising, like it's not just like, you know, ads like for anything. If you go to our homepage, it's, you know, specific to basically 2 companies that we partner with that, you know, help you with your career. So the 2 companies being TripleByte and Free Agency, and they're both really, really tied to kind of our product in that, you know, they help people with kind of TripleByte is recruiting, so they'll help people. They're essentially the common app for applying for jobs. So you can kind of apply once and then get interviews at different places, and you're automatically kind of taken to onsite. And I think, you know, that really aligns with, you know, our site, because, you know, we want to get people to the job stage, to that offer stage. And, you know, a lot of people that are looking on our site are like looking for jobs. So I think it's a very aligned way for us to kind of make money. And And I mean, on top of that, you know, you want to build product. And I think this is something we're doing now, is where we're actually helping people kind of negotiate their salaries. And, you know, we have like this service where we kind of charge 5% of the upside that we get you, capped at like $5,000. So basically, if we negotiate over $100,000 for you, it'll be capped at like 5,000. But basically, like, if we can negotiate some amount of money for you on your behalf, and, you know, we encourage everyone to negotiate. We even put it on our site, and, you know, you can do it yourself, or you can, you know, get help from us, whatever you do. But like, I think you should always negotiate. It's really helpful to, and we sort of kind of encase that in a product now to kind of help people. And I mean, we're getting started with it, so we'll see how that goes. But it's like, so far we haven't really had our own products per se. We just kind of like had advertisements that, you know, we kind of like picked out partners that we wanted to work with, and we kind of have like just arrangements with them.
So do you like speak on behalf of a person, or you give them tips on negotiating?
Yeah. So there are two ways we're looking at it. One is like a very talent agent way, where we kind of act as the agent and can even get on phone calls. But I mean, I don't think that works for every company, especially at like private or like smaller level companies. Like, you want to have a more intimate kind of relationship as a candidate with, you know, a recruiter or like whoever you're talking with at a company. So I think this works like, you know, maybe at like larger kind of like FANG type companies, like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and, you know, where you kind of have more of like a, I want to say like transactional relationship. I mean, it's not really, but like, you know, it's more skewed towards that direction at like a larger company. And the other way we're kind of looking at it is like providing resources and like scripts and like help to kind of get you to help you negotiate your salary. And we have the data, it's open on our site. But we would kind of like help you pinpoint, you know, your targets based on like what offers you have, and use like different offers as leverage to kind of increase your salary. And it's just kind of coaching around that. And we have like, to be frank, actually, we kind of, we like talked to this one company that, you know, did this negotiation service. They unfortunately, like, you know, couldn't sustain it and keep it going. And so they kind of give us all their resources and how they help people. And we're kind of trying to go off of that. And, you know, we're still learning right now. I mean, I have a few calls later, and we're still trying to learn exactly how we want to go about this process. But we're thinking it could be like, you know, an interesting way to help people while, you know, also keeping, you know, like it's a strategic model in that we also get the numbers from the offer letter afterwards. And it, you know, helps kind of feed our site with, you know, verified information as well. So we think it's like a very, very kind of strategic way of, you know, kind of monetizing and also helping people in the community.
Right. That's really, really cool. I know you guys have a lot of questions. I'm going to try to get through as many as we can. Do you think you can maximize your impact as a founder or VC? This is general to everybody.
Yeah, I hope I understood this question correctly, and feel free to ask it again if I didn't answer it the right way. But there's always opportunities for you to give back, and I feel like if you're a founder, you're always getting help from someone. You're getting help from mentors, you're getting help from advisors, and these people have been in your position before. They've, for example, started up a company where they didn't really understand what were the basics 1, 2, 3 or startup 101 in order to get your business up and running. So you're relied on these people to be able to kickstart your own business. And to a certain extent, once you make it, once you start growing, once you develop that background, that expertise, there should be a way for you to give back to your own community. And you go back and you try to bring in your own learnings and give your own learnings to other people who are starting up their own businesses, or maybe the youth who are passionate about entrepreneurship or passionate about starting their own ideas or ventures. So that's one way you can maximize your impact as a founder, in my opinion.
Okay. This next question is a little heavy, and I think a lot of you guys can elaborate a lot on this, but if we can make it as brief as possible. How do you overcome burnout when developing new products take longer than usual? So anybody wants to tackle that, but briefly, I'm sorry.
I can give a quick answer. So the way I've done it is I found like over the past years, I've been involved in either like tech products or community products. Many times I would put a lot of effort into tech until I burn out, and then I kind of put my effort into 20%, put more effort into community, do it a lot, have a lot of drama, burnout, and then like go back to tech. This is something that has been working for me, like switching between both of them. And understand in general, it's fine if you do burnout and you want to sometimes take it easy, like you don't always want to be pushing yourself to like be at like most productivity. And be conscious that everyone has like highs and lows, and it's normal that you're not always productive.
Okay. Jazakallah khairan. There are a few more questions, but I don't think we have time to get to any of them. For the last couple minutes, for the panelists, is there anything that you guys want to add on, or anything you guys would like to, felt like we didn't go over that you guys would like to elaborate on a little bit?
I mean, I think like, you know, especially for people who are still interested in questions, I can drop kind of like some contact information, and people can feel free to reach out. If you have any feedback on our product, levels.fyi, like happy to hear from you. Like we're learning every day, and we're kind of a lot, like our calculator that we just recently built was literally like a user suggestion a few weeks ago. So, you know, if you have any suggestions for us, we'd love to hear from you. But yeah, other than that, it was great like hearing from other panelists too. I feel like I learned a lot too. So it's awesome. Thanks for putting this on.
Alhamdulillah.
One thing I'll just like to add towards the end is that you're always going to have ideas, and ideas come and go. It's a matter of execution at the end of the day, and that's what really matters. And that's how you're going to be able to put your idea forward. So take that leap of faith, give it a shot. You've got nothing to lose, in my opinion. Make sure you always focus on what you are really passionate about, and try to take that an idea and make it into something meaningful that can potentially have an impact on people's lives.
Indeed. SubhanAllah. Nadah?
Yeah, just wanted to say Jazakallah khairan again for organizing the whole hackathon and for this panel. I learned a lot as well from everyone. And one other piece of advice, I guess, is also don't underestimate networking. You never know when you're going to find, you know, the next person that you're going to be working with on some project. And this is like a really interesting space to be in, because there's so many brilliant people in this group and that are participating in this hackathon. So make sure that you get to know people.
Yeah, I would echo Nadah's advice. I would say make the most out of this hackathon. 3 things you should try to make the most out of, like building a product and getting it out by the end of the hackathon. You rarely have such an environment to work on something with a clear deadline, and you have a team and resources and mentors to help you. True, try to make the most out of the people around you. You have, mashallah, amazing mentors. You have team members that you might work with each other in the future on like even different products. And 3, try to maximize the learning. I know there are other like great sessions like the one happening later today. So try to attend as many of them and try to make most of the learning. Lastly, thank you, Shams, and the rest of the organizing team. This has been amazing, mashallah. It's been an honor for us to attend.
Jazakallah khairan. So inshallah khair, throughout the 3 weeks of UmmaHacks, or 3 weekends, it's like 2.5 weeks of UmmaHacks, we'll be having specific keynotes and panels like this one, and workshops. Yesterday we had a UI UX workshop by Hamza Siddiqui, who's a interactive designer at Google. Later today, we'll be having a machine learning applications workshop by actually one of the machine learning engineers or scientists at Tarteel. And he'll be teaching on how to develop, debug, and demo machine learning applications fast. Next weekend, inshallah, we'll be having a plethora of events, inshallah, and one of them being a panel just like this one on how to navigate the corporate environment as a Muslim woman. So we're really excited for these things. You can find our like all the stuff on ummahacks.com. We are still working on our schedule little button. So right now it just sends you to a Google Calendar, but inshallah, we'll have that fixed. If you guys have any further questions, you guys can reach out to me. I'll just drop my email down there. I worked really hard on getting that domain, so I just had to flex that. But jazakallah khairan, guys. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.